Jake Morrison wiped sweat from his forehead as he guided his cargo ship through the busy space lanes around Nexus Prime. The massive trading station looked like a metal city floating in space, with thousands of ships coming and going every hour. Jake had been running cargo for 3 years now, and he still felt small every time he saw this place. His ship, the Liberty Bell, was nothing special. Just an old cargo hauler that he had bought with his savings after leaving Earth. The paint was faded and the engines made strange noises, but she got him from place to place. That was all Jake needed. The docking bay smelled like fuel and alien sweat. Jake walked down the metal ramp, carrying his payment pad and a list of supplies he needed. The station was always loud and busy. Aliens of all shapes and sizes moved through the corridors. Some had scales, others had fur. Some walked on 2 legs, others on 4 or 6. Jake had learned to keep his eyes forward and mind his own business. Humans were still new to this part of space. Most aliens treated them like they were not very important. Jake had learned this the hard way during his first few trips. It was better to stay quiet and not cause trouble. He finished buying fuel and food supplies in the main market. Everything was expensive, but that was normal on Nexus Prime. Jake was about to head back to his ship when he heard loud voices coming from a side corridor. His curiosity got the better of him, and he decided to take a look. The corridor led to a lower level of the station that Jake had never seen before. The lights were dimmer here and the air smelled worse. There was a crowd of aliens gathered around a raised platform. Jake pushed closer to see what was happening. It was an auction, but they were not selling cargo or equipment. They were selling people. Jake felt his stomach turn as he watched. On the platform stood different kinds of beings, all wearing metal collars around their necks. Chains connected the collars to posts on the platform. The auctioneer was a fat alien with purple skin and 4 arms. He was speaking in Galactic Standard, the common language used for trade. Next item is a fine specimen from Cytheria, the auctioneer called out. Young female, fully trained, very obedient, perfect for companionship or light work. Jake watched in horror as they brought out a young woman. She was clearly not human, but she looked similar in many ways. Her skin had a blue-silver color that seemed to shimmer in the light. Her hair was white and fell to her shoulders. Her eyes were larger than a human's and had a golden color. Despite the chains and collar, she stood straight with her head up. Their bidding started. Different aliens in the crowd raised their hands or made sounds to place bids. Jake listened to them talk about her like she was a piece of equipment. His hands turned into fists as anger built up inside him. She knows 3 languages, the auctioneer continued. House-trained, will not cause trouble. Starting bid is 500 credits. The price went up quickly. Jake watched the alien woman's face. She was trying to stay brave, but he could see fear in her golden eyes. She understood what was happening to her. A large alien with gray skin and sharp teeth was winning the bidding. Jake had seen his kind before. They were called Vorthak, and they had a reputation for being cruel. The Vorthak was grinning as he made his bids, showing rows of pointed teeth. Going once at 1,500 credits, the auctioneer called out. Jake felt something break inside him. He could not just stand there and watch. Before he knew what he was doing, he raised his hand. 2,000 credits, he called out in a loud voice. The crowd turned to look at him. Many of the aliens seemed surprised that a human was bidding. The Vorthak buyer looked angry and raised his bid to 2,500. Jake's heart was pounding. That was most of his money, but he could not stop now. 3,000, Jake said. The alien woman looked at him for the first time. Their eyes met across the crowd, and Jake saw something change in her expression. Hope, maybe, or just confusion about why a human would bid on her. The Vorthak made an angry sound and bid 4,000. Jake felt his mouth go dry. That was more money than he had. But then he remembered the emergency fund he kept hidden in his ship. Money he had saved for repairs or medical bills. 5,000 credits, Jake said. The crowd went quiet. Even the auctioneer looked surprised. The Vorthak buyer stared at Jake with hatred in his small black eyes, but he did not bid higher. Going once, going twice, sold to the human for 5,000 credits. the auctioneer announced. Jake's legs felt weak as he made his way to the payment station. 5,000 credits was everything he had. He would have to find work fast, or he would not be able to buy fuel for his next trip. But as he handed over the money, he knew he had done the right thing. The station guards brought the alien woman over to him. She was still wearing the collar and chains. One of the guards handed Jake a small device. "Remote control for the collar," the guard said with a nasty grin. "Press the red button if she gives you trouble. The shock will teach her to behave." Jake took the device, but felt sick holding it. The woman stood next to him, not looking up. She was waiting to see what kind of owner he would be. "Come on," Jake said softly. "Let's get out of here." As they walked through the station corridors, other aliens stared at them. Some looked amused, others seemed confused. Jake heard one alien say to another, "Stupid human paid too much for that pet." The word pet made Jake's anger rise again. This was a person, not a pet. But he kept quiet until they reached his ship. Once they were aboard, the Liberty Bell, Jake turned to face the woman. She was standing near the door, still chained, still waiting. Her golden eyes watched him carefully. Jake held up the remote control. For a moment, the woman's eyes went wide with fear. Then Jake dropped the device on the floor and stepped on it, crushing it under his boot. "You're not a pet," he said clearly, "and I'm not your owner." The woman stared at the broken remote, then at Jake. For the first time since he had seen her, tears started to fall from her golden eyes. Jake looked at the broken remote on the floor, then at the alien woman standing before him. She was still crying, but her tears seemed different now. Not tears of fear, but something else he could not understand. "My name is Jake," he said gently. "What's your name?" She looked at him with surprise, as if no one had asked her that question in a long time. When she spoke, her voice was soft and had a musical quality to it. "Zara," she said in broken galactic standard. "My name is Zara." Jake smiled. "Nice to meet you, Zara. Let me get those chains off you." Zara stepped back quickly, shaking her head. No, she said. "Master will be angry. Chains must stay." "I'm not your master," Jake said firmly. "And those chains are coming off." It took Jake 20 minutes to figure out how to unlock the collar and chains. They were designed to only be removed with a special key, but Jake had good tools in his repair kit. When the collar finally clicked open, Zara touched her neck with wonder, as if she had forgotten what it felt like to be free. "Sit down," Jake said, pointing to a chair at his small dining table. "You must be hungry." Zara sat down carefully, like she expected the chair to be taken away from her. Jake opened a food container and put it in front of her along with a fork. Zara stared at the fork for a long moment. Is this for me?" she asked. "Of course," Jake said. "It's just basic protein and vegetables, but it's filling." Zara picked up the fork like it was made of gold. She took a small bite, chewed slowly, then suddenly began eating fast as if she was afraid the food would disappear. "Slow down," Jake said kindly. "There's plenty. You can have more if you want." While Zara ate, Jake tried to learn more about her. Her galactic standard was not perfect, but she also knew some English words. Jake discovered that Catherians were naturally good at learning languages. "I was teacher," Zara said between bites. "Taught young ones about old stories, old poems from my world." "What happened to your world?" Jake asked. Zara's face became sad. "Vorthak came 2 years ago. They said Catherians were weak, only good for serving strong species. They took many of us, made us into—" She struggled for the word. "Property." Jake felt anger rise in his chest. Again. The Vorthak Empire was one of the most powerful forces in this part of space. They had conquered dozens of worlds, always claiming they were bringing order to weak species. "They trained me," Zara continued. "Taught me to be quiet, to obey, to never look up. If I made mistake, they would—" She touched her neck where the collar had been. Jake understood. The collar was not just for show. It was a weapon. "Well, you don't have to be quiet anymore," Jake said. "This is my ship. And on my ship, everyone is equal." Zara looked confused. Equal? It means you're just as important as me. You can speak when you want, go where you want, do what you want. But I am Cytherian. You are human. The law says, I don't care what the law says. Jake interrupted. The law is wrong. For the next few days, Jake and Zara stayed on his ship while he looked for cargo jobs. Zara was slowly getting used to her freedom. She would ask permission before touching anything, and she always tried to stay out of Jake's way. But gradually she began to relax. Jake gave her the spare sleeping room and showed her how everything worked. Zara was fascinated by human technology. She learned quickly and soon was helping Jake with basic ship maintenance. Your people are very clever, she said one day while helping Jake fix a broken control panel. This design is very good. You're pretty clever yourself, Jake said. You figured out this wiring faster than I did. Zara smiled. It was the first real smile Jake had seen from her. Their peaceful time was interrupted when Jake's communication system beeped with an incoming message. The face that appeared on the screen made Jake's blood run cold. It was a Vorthak officer wearing the uniform of the Imperial Navy. Human vessel Liberty Bell, the Vorthak said in a deep, threatening voice. This is Commander Veltar of the Imperial Ship Dominator. Prepare to be boarded for inspection. Jake looked at Zara. Her face had gone pale with fear. He's the one who trained me, she whispered. He knows I'm here. Within an hour, the Vorthak ship had caught up with them. It was 10 times bigger than the Liberty Bell and bristling with weapons. Jake had no choice but to let them board. Commander Veltar was even more frightening in person than on the screen. He was 8 feet tall with gray skin, sharp teeth, and cold black eyes. 2 armed. Guards followed him onto Jake's ship. I am conducting a routine inspection, Veltar said, but his tone made it clear this was not routine at all. I have heard reports that a human has been mishandling valuable property. Zara had hidden in the cargo hold, but Jake knew Veltar would find her. The Vorthak commander walked through the ship like he owned it, touching things and examining everything. Where is she, human? Veltar asked when he did not find Zara right away. Where is who? Jake asked, trying to sound innocent. Veltar backhanded Jake across the face, sending him crashing into the wall. Jake tasted blood in his mouth as he struggled to stand up. Do not play games with me, Veltar growled. I know you purchased Cytherian, property at Nexus Prime. Property that belongs to me. She's not property, Jake said, wiping blood from his lip. She's a person. Veltar laughed, a horrible sound like breaking glass. A person? That thing is barely more intelligent than an animal. It exists to serve its betters. That was when Zara appeared. She had been hiding, but seeing Jake hurt made her brave. She stepped into the room and looked directly at Veltar. I am not an animal, she said clearly. I am Cytherian. I have a name. I have thoughts. I have dreams. Veltar stared at her in shock. For 2 years, he had trained her to never look at him directly, never speak unless spoken to, never show any independence. Now she was standing straight, looking him in the eye, speaking with confidence. Impossible, Veltar whispered. Then his shock turned to rage. What have you done to my property, human? I set her free, Jake said, standing up despite his bleeding. Base Veltar pulled out a weapon and pointed it at Jake. But before he could fire, Zara stepped between them. If you hurt him, I will never obey you again, she said. Never. Even if you put the collar back on me. Even if you shock me every day. I will fight you until I die. For a long moment, Veltar said nothing. Jake could see the commander's mind working, trying to understand how his perfectly trained slave had become this defiant person. Finally, Veltar put his weapon away. You have made a grave mistake, human, he said. Both of you. The Empire does not forget. We do not forgive. He turned and walked toward the exit, his guards following. At the door, he looked back at Jake and Zara. Enjoy your freedom while you can, he said. It will not last long. After the Vorthak ship left, Jake and Zara sat in the main cabin, both shaking from the encounter. But when Jake looked at Zara, He saw something new in her golden eyes. Not fear this time, but determination. "We cannot stay in Empire space," she said. "Veltar will come back with more ships." Jake nodded. "Then we leave. There are places beyond the Empire's reach." "You would do that?" Zara asked. "Give up your life here for someone you barely know?" Jake thought about it for a moment. He was giving up everything. His trade routes, his customers, maybe his chance to ever return to civilized space. But when he looked at Zara, he knew his answer. "Freedom is worth fighting for," he said, "even if it costs everything." Jake set the Liberty Bell on a course away from Empire space, but he was not sure where to go. Fuel was running low and they needed supplies. More importantly, they needed help. Veltar would not give up easily, and Jake knew they could not run forever. "I have friend," Jake told Zara as they studied the star charts. "Another cargo pilot named Lisa Torres. She runs supplies to frontier colonies. If anyone knows safe places to go, it's her." They met Lisa at a small refueling station on the edge of known space. Lisa was a tough woman in her 40s with short, black hair and sharp eyes. She had been flying cargo ships even longer than Jake. "You look like hell, Morrison," Lisa said when she saw Jake's bruised face. "What kind of trouble are you in this time?" Jake explained everything: the slave auction, Zara, and the encounter with Commander Veltar. Lisa listened without interrupting, but her expression grew more serious with each detail. "You really bought a slave just to set her free?" Lisa asked when Jake finished his story. "She's not a slave," Jake said firmly. "She never was." Lisa looked at Zara, who had been quietly listening to the conversation. "Can you understand me?" Lisa asked her directly. "Yes," Zara replied. "Jake taught me more English. I learn fast." "I bet you do," Lisa said with a small smile. Then her expression became serious again. "Jake, you have no idea what you've gotten yourself into. The Vorthak Empire doesn't just let valuable property walk away." "So what are you saying?" Jake asked. "I'm saying you need more help than I can give you alone." Lisa paused, seeming to make a decision. "But I know someone who might help. Ever heard of the Broken Chain?" Jake shook his head, but Zara's eyes went wide. "The resistance fighters," she whispered. "I heard stories in the slave pens. Beings who rescue others like me." Lisa nodded. "It's real, and it's bigger than most people think. But getting their help means you can never go back to your old life. Once you join the resistance, the Empire considers you an enemy forever." Jake looked at Zara, then back at Lisa. "Where do we find them?" 2 days later, Lisa led them to an asteroid field in an empty system far from any trade routes. Hidden among the floating rocks was a secret base built inside a hollowed-out asteroid. Jake was amazed at how well hidden it was, even knowing where to look. He almost missed it. The base was full of activity. Beings of many different species worked together, repairing ships, studying computer screens, and training for combat. Jake saw humans working alongside aliens he had never seen before. Everyone treated each other as equals. Their leader was a man named Ben Casey, a former military officer from Earth. He was tall and thin with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too much suffering. When Lisa brought Jake and Zara to meet him, Ben listened to their story with interest. "So you're the human who's been making Veltar angry," Ben said to Jake. "Good. That monster deserves all the anger he gets." "You know him?" Jake asked. "We've tangled with him before. He's one of the worst, runs 3 slave processing stations, and has personally broken thousands of beings into submission." Ben turned to Zara. "What's your story?" Zara told Ben about her capture and training. As she spoke, Jake noticed other beings gathering around to listen. Many of them had similar stories: capture, slavery, and eventual rescue by the Broken Chain. "My people were scholars and artists," Zara said. "We had beautiful cities and ancient knowledge. The Vorthak said we were weak because we did not build weapons. They destroyed our libraries and scattered our families." "How many Catherians are here?" Jake asked, noticing several beings with blue-silver skin in the crowd. 43, said a voice from behind them. Jake turned to see a young Cytherian male approaching. He was taller than Zara and more muscled, with scars on his arms that looked like old battle wounds. Zara stared at him in shock. "Kyle?" she whispered. The young male's tough expression melted away. "Sister," he said in their native language. They ran to each other and embraced, both crying. Jake watched the reunion with mixed emotions. He was happy that Zara had found family, but sad to see how much her brother had changed. Kale looked like a warrior now, hard and angry in a way that Zara was not. "I thought you were dead," Zara told her brother in English so the others could understand. "I thought the same about you," Kale replied. "When the Vorthak attacked our city, I saw you fall. I searched for you, but there were too many soldiers. The Vorthak took me to a training facility," Zara explained. "They made me forget who I was, but Jake helped me remember." Kale looked at Jake with new respect. "You freed my sister?" "She freed herself," Jake said. "I just gave her the chance." Over the next few days, Jake and Zara learned about life at the Resistance base. The Broken Chain had been fighting the Empire for 5 years, rescuing slaves and attacking Vorthak facilities. They had saved thousands of beings, but the Empire was vast and the problem seemed endless. Jake began training with weapons and combat tactics. He had never been a soldier, but he learned quickly. The other fighters respected him for what he had done for Zara, and they were eager to teach him. Zara discovered that her skills as a scholar made her valuable in other ways. She was excellent at learning computer systems and hacking into Imperial databases. Her knowledge of languages helped the Resistance communicate with newly rescued beings. "Your sister has a gift," Ben told Kale one day while watching Zara work at a computer terminal. "She broke into a Vorthak transport schedule in half the time it usually takes." Zara was always the smart one, Kyle said with pride. She could read ancient texts that scholars twice her age couldn't understand. It was during one of these hacking sessions that Zara made a disturbing discovery. She found Imperial records showing a massive slave transport preparing to leave the Kepler Nebula in 3 days. The ship would be carrying over 400 beings to processing centers deeper in Empire space. "If that transport reaches its destination, those beings will be broken and sold just like I was," Zara told the gathered Resistance leaders. "We have to stop it." Ben studied the intelligence data. "It's heavily guarded. 3 escort ships and the transport itself. We'd be outnumbered and outgunned, but not outsmarted," said Lisa, who had decided to stay and help the Resistance. "The nebula will interfere with their sensors. If we time it right, we might be able to get close before they detect us." Jake volunteered immediately. "I'm in." "So, am I?" Zara said firmly. "Absolutely not," Kyle said to his sister. "You just escaped slavery. I won't let you risk being captured again." "You cannot stop me," Zara replied calmly. "These beings need help. I know Vorthak computer systems better than anyone here. Without me, the mission will fail." Ben looked around the room at the assembled volunteers. "Everyone understands what this means. If we do this, there's no going back. The Empire will know we exist and they'll hunt us across the galaxy." "They're already hunting us," said one of the other fighters. "At least this way we hit back. Some fights are worth the risk," Jake added, remembering what he had told Zara before. Ben nodded slowly. "Then we do this. But we do it smart. And we all come home." As the Resistance fighters prepared for their first major mission, Jake found himself standing next to Zara on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. In a few hours they would be heading into danger that could get them all killed or worse. "Are you scared?" Zara asked him. Jake thought about it honestly. "Yes," he said, "but I'm more angry than scared. What the Empire does to people like you, it's wrong. Someone has to fight it." Zara nodded. "On my world we had a saying, even the smallest light can push back the darkness. I used to think it was just poetry. Now I understand." "What do you mean?" "You are the small light, Jake Morrison. When you bought me at that auction, when you..." Broke my collar when you chose to help me instead of walking away. That was light pushing back darkness. Jake felt a warmth in his chest at her words. I'm not alone anymore. None of us are. We're all lights now. As their small fleet prepared to leave the asteroid base, Jake looked around at the mixed group of humans and aliens working together. They came from different worlds and different species, but they shared the same dream, a galaxy where no one would ever be chained again. The mission to rescue the slave transport would be dangerous, but Jake knew they were ready. They had something the Empire did not understand. They were fighting not for conquest or power, but for freedom itself. And freedom, Jake had learned, was worth any risk. The Kepler Nebula was a maze of colorful gas clouds and floating debris. It was beautiful and dangerous at the same time. The gas interfered with sensors and communication, which made it perfect for the resistance mission. If they could get close to the slave transport without being detected, they might have a chance. Jake flew a modified fighter that had been fitted with extra weapons and armor. It was faster than his cargo ship, but much less comfortable. Every bump and turn rattled his bones, but he gritted his teeth and focused on the mission. Zara was in the command ship with Ben, Casey, and the other leaders. She had argued to be in Jake's fighter, but Ben needed her hacking skills to break into the transport systems. Jake could see her ship on his display screen, along with 15 other resistance vessels. All units, this is Control. Ben's voice came through Jake's headset. Target is 2 kilometers ahead. 3 escort ships as expected. Remember, our goal is to disable, not destroy. There are innocent people on that transport. Jake's hands tightened on his fighter's controls. Through the swirling gas clouds, he could see the Imperial convoy. The slave transport was massive. A ugly gray box designed for cargo, not passengers. The 3 escort ships were smaller but heavily armed Vorthak destroyers. Zara, can you get into their communications? Ben asked over the radio. Working on it, came Zara's reply. Jake could picture her bent over a computer terminal, her golden eyes focused as her fingers flew across the controls. Almost got it. Their sensors are having trouble with the nebula interference. They don't know we're here yet. Good. All fighters begin attack run. Target their engines first. Lisa, take your team and get ready to board the transport. Jake pushed his fighter forward, weaving between the gas clouds. His heart was pounding, but his hands were steady. The first escort ship grew larger in his windscreen. He could see weapon turrets turning to track his approach. They see us now, someone shouted over the radio. The battle erupted all around Jake. Laser beams cut through the colorful gas clouds like deadly lightning. The Vorthak ships had better weapons, but the resistance, fighters were faster and knew the nebula better. Jake dove under one destroyer and fired at its engine section, watching with satisfaction as explosions blossomed across its hull. But the Empire ships were not helpless. One of the resistance fighters took a direct hit and exploded in a ball of fire. Jake saw the pilot's name flash on his screen, Marcus Webb, a former slave who had joined the resistance 6 months ago. Now he was gone. Jake, your ship is taking damage. Zara's voice came through his headset. Get out of there. Jake looked at his instruments and saw warning lights flashing. His fighter had been hit by debris from the exploding resistance ship. His left engine was failing and his navigation system was shutting down. I'm going in, Jake said into his radio. Lisa, I'll meet you on the transport. Jake, no, Zara shouted. It's too dangerous. But Jake was already committed. He aimed his damaged fighter at the slave transport's docking bay and prayed he would not crash too hard. The transport's hull rushed up to meet him, and then everything went black. Jake woke up on the metal floor of the transport's cargo bay. His head was bleeding and his left arm felt broken, but he was alive. Around him, he could hear the sounds of battle, laser fire, shouting voices, and the hum of machines. He struggled to his feet and grabbed his weapon from the wreckage of his fighter. The transport's cargo bays were enormous, filled with cages that held hundreds of beings. Jake had never seen so many different species in one place, some humanoid like himself and Zara, others completely alien with tentacles or multiple arms. Many of the prisoners looked broken and hopeless. They huddled in their cages, too frightened to even hope for rescue. But others pressed against the bars when they saw Jake, their eyes bright with the possibility of freedom. Human, called out one of the prisoners, a reptilian being with green scales. Are you here to free us? Yes, Jake said, working to break the electronic locks on the cages. We're getting you out of here. More resistance fighters poured into the cargo bay, led by Lisa Torres. They spread out quickly, breaking open cages and helping prisoners to their feet. Some of the freed beings were too weak to walk and had to be carried. Zara's team has control of the bridge, Lisa told Jake as she helped an elderly alien woman out of her cage. But we've got Imperial troops moving toward us from the other sections. Jake nodded and continued freeing prisoners. Many of them could not understand Galactic Standard, so he used simple gestures to show them what to do. A group of human colonists recognized him as one of their own and helped translate for the other prisoners. How did you end up here? Jake asked one of the humans, a middle-aged man with farmer's clothes. Raiders hit our settlement on Epsilon Colony, the man replied. Came in the night, took anyone young and healthy enough to work. My wife. His voice broke. They said she was too old to be worth anything. Jake felt anger burn in his chest. The Empire did not just enslave beings. It destroyed families and communities without a second thought. Every person in these cages represented dozens of others who had been hurt or killed. The sound of laser fire was getting closer. Imperial troops were fighting their way through the ship toward the cargo bays. Jake helped load the last group of prisoners onto the rescue ships, but there were so many that some would have to wait for a second trip. That's everyone from Bay 1, Lisa reported over her radio. Moving to Bay 2. But Bay 2 was where the Imperial troops had made their stand. Heavy weapons fire echoed through the corridors as resistance fighters battled Vorthak soldiers in powered armor. The aliens were tough and well-equipped, but they were fighting beings who had nothing left to lose. Jake found himself next to Kale in the battle for Bay 2. Zara's brother fought with the fury of someone who remembered exactly what slavery felt like. His weapon never missed its target, and he moved through the fight like a force of nature. Your sister would be proud, Jake shouted over the noise of battle. She is proud, Kale replied. She's watching on the security cameras and giving us tactical advice. Indeed, Zara's voice came through their headsets with updates and warnings. Imperial reinforcements coming from Section C, she would say, or weak spot in their armor formation on the left side. The battle lasted 20 minutes, but it felt like hours. When the last Imperial soldier fell, Jake and the others rushed to free the remaining prisoners. These beings were in even worse condition. Some had been aboard the transport for weeks and were barely alive. As they loaded the last group of prisoners onto rescue ships, alarms began blaring throughout the transport. Red lights flashed, and an automated voice spoke in Vorthak. What's it saying? Lisa asked. Zara's voice came through, their radios tight with worry. Self-destruct sequence, the transport is set to explode in 10 minutes. Jake looked around the cargo bay. They had rescued over 400 beings, but at a terrible cost. Ben Casey had been killed in the fighting, along with 12 other resistance fighters. Several more were badly wounded and might not survive. The trip back to base. But as Jake watched the freed prisoners helping each other into the rescue ships, he knew the sacrifice had been worth it. These beings would never have to wear chains again. They would have the chance to build new lives in freedom. The resistance fleet escaped just as the slave transport exploded. The blast lit up the nebula like a small star, visible for millions of kilometers. Jake watched it fade from the viewport of Lisa's ship, where he was receiving medical treatment for his injuries. That's one transport that will never carry slaves again, Lisa said grimly. But there will be others, Jake replied. This is just the beginning. Zara found him in the ship's medical bay an hour later. Her golden eyes were bright with tears, but she was smiling. The rescued beings want to thank you, she said. All of them. They know what you did today. Jake shook his head. We all did it together. That's what makes us different from the Empire. We fight for each other. Zara sat down beside his bed. The older humans you rescued, they had news from Earth. The government knows about the slave raids on human colonies, but they're not doing anything to stop them. They say they don't want to provoke a war with the Empire. Jake felt a familiar anger rise in his chest. So they're willing to let their own people be enslaved to avoid a fight? It appears so. But some of the colonists want to join us. They say Earth may not be willing to fight for freedom, but they are. Jake nodded. The resistance was growing, but so was the danger. After today's attack, the Empire would know they existed. Veltar and others like him would be hunting them with everything they had. But looking around at the rescued beings filling every corner of the ship, humans and aliens working together, helping each other heal from their ordeal, Jake felt something he had not expected. Hope. They had proven today that the Empire could be beaten, not easily and not without cost, but it could be done. And as word spread of their victory, others would join them. The chain of slavery was beginning to crack. What happens now? Zara asked. Jake squeezed her hand with his uninjured arm. Now we build something better. 6 months after the rescue at Kepler Nebula, the colony of New Dawn was growing every day. What had started as a hidden refugee camp was now becoming a real settlement. The planet they had chosen was beautiful, green forests, clean rivers, and soil perfect for farming. More importantly, it was far from any imperial trade routes. Jake stood on a hill overlooking the main settlement, watching former slaves and freedom fighters work together to build their new home. Humans worked alongside Catherians, while other, alien species shared their knowledge of farming and construction. Children of different species played together, learning each other's languages. The school is almost finished, Zara said, joining him on the hill. She wore simple work clothes, now instead of the chains and collar of her slavery days. Her blue-silver skin glowed with health and happiness. How many students will we have? Jake asked. 47 children from 12 different species, Zara replied proudly. I'll teach them languages and history. Kale will handle physical training and self-defense. Jake smiled. Zara had found her calling as a teacher again, but now she taught more than just ancient poetry. She made sure every child in New Dawn knew the history of slavery and the importance of freedom. Their peaceful morning was interrupted by an alarm from the settlement's communication center. Jake and Zara ran down the hill to the command building, where Lisa Torres was studying a display screen with a worried expression. What is it? Jake asked. Long-range sensors picked up a fleet approaching our system, Lisa said. 20 ships at least, all Vorthak design. Jake felt his stomach drop. They had always known this day would come. The Empire could not let a successful colony of former slaves exist. It would give too much hope to beings still in chains. How long until they arrive? Zara asked. 6 hours, maybe 7 if they slow down to scan the outer planets. The next few hours were a blur of activity. The colony's defense ships, mostly converted cargo vessels with weapons bolted on, took positions around the planet. The settlement's shields were raised, and weapon systems came online. But everyone knew they were badly outgunned. Jake found himself in the colony's war room with the other leaders, planning their defense. The room was crowded with beings of all species, each contributing their knowledge and skills. We have 18 ships that can fight, reported Captain Kyle Murphy, a former Earth naval officer who had joined the resistance. The Vorthak fleet has 23 vessels, including at least 1 heavy battlecruiser. What about the orbital defense platforms? Asked Dr. Nina Voss, the colony's head scientist. They'll help, but they're not military grade. We built them to stop pirates, not an imperial fleet. Jake studied the tactical display, looking for any advantage they could find. The Vorthak were superior in numbers and firepower, but they were also overconfident. They expected to face frightened slaves, not organized resistance. We don't have to defeat them, Jake said slowly. We just have to make them pay such a high price that other Imperial commanders will think twice before attacking. Colonies like ours. That's assuming anyone survives to tell the story, Kyle pointed out grimly. That was when Zara spoke up. I've been monitoring Imperial communications. The fleet is commanded by someone we know, Veltar. Jake felt old anger stir in his chest. The Vorthak commander who had tried to reclaim Zara was coming to finish what he had started. He's been demoted since our last encounter, Zara continued. The Empire blames him for losing the slave transport at Kepler Nebula. This attack is his chance to regain his honor. Which means he'll fight to the death rather than retreat, Lisa said. Desperate. Enemies are the most dangerous kind. The Imperial fleet arrived exactly when the sensors predicted. 23 ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system and began moving toward New Dawn. Jake watched from the command center as the enemy vessels grew larger on the display screens. Incoming transmission, the communications officer announced. Veltar's face appeared on the main screen. He looked older and angrier than Jake remembered. His gray skin was scarred and his black eyes burned with hatred. Humans and their pets, Veltar said with disgust. I know you can hear me. You have stolen Imperial property and defied the natural order of the galaxy. Surrender now, and I will make your deaths quick. Jake stepped forward so Veltar could see him. The only thing we've stolen is our freedom, and we're not giving it back. Veltar's face twisted into a snarl. I remember you, little human. You corrupted my property with your weak ideas. Today I will correct that mistake. Your property has a name, Jake replied. Her name is Zara, and she's standing right here. Zara moved to stand beside Jake, looking directly into the camera. Hello, Veltar. I want you to see what your property has become. Veltar stared at her image. For a moment, Jake thought he saw something like shock in the Vorthak's eyes. Zara looked nothing like the broken slave he had once owned. She stood, tall and confident, dressed in the uniform of a New Dawn leader. You will pay for this defiance, Veltar growled. Then the transmission cut off. The battle began an hour later. The Imperial ships came in fast, trying to overwhelm the colonies, defenses with sheer firepower. But Jake and the other defenders were ready. They used the planet's gravity well and asteroid field to their advantage, forcing the Vorthak ships into narrow attack corridors where their numbers meant less. Jake flew his fighter, a newer model, built in the colony's workshops, straight into the heart of the enemy formation. Around him, other defenders did the same. They were outnumbered but not outfought. Every pilot knew they were fighting for their homes and families. The space around, New Dawn lit up with laser fire and explosions. Ships on both sides took damage and fell out of formation. Jake's fighter was hit twice but kept flying. He managed to destroy one Vorthak destroyer and damage another before his weapons overheated. On the ground, Zara coordinated the defense from the command center. Her knowledge of Vorthak tactics and technology proved invaluable as she guided the colony's ships away from enemy traps and into position for counterattacks. The battle raged for 3 hours. Both sides took heavy losses, but gradually the Vorthak fleet began to gain the upper hand. Their superior numbers and firepower were slowly wearing down the colony's defenses. That was when help arrived. New contacts coming in, the sensor operator announced. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. Jake held his breath, afraid it was Imperial reinforcements. But the ships that appeared were not Vorthak. They flew the flags of a dozen different species. Some Jake recognized, others he had never seen before. This is Captain Elena Rodriguez of the Free Ship Liberator, came a voice over the communication channel. New Dawn Colony, we're here to help. Jake felt tears of relief blur his vision. Word of the colony's success had spread throughout the Yao galaxy, inspiring other resistance groups and sympathetic species to join their cause. The fleet that had come to help was made up of former slaves, defectors from various militaries, and free traders who were tired of Imperial tyranny. With the reinforcements, the balance of the battle shifted. The combined free fleet outnumbered the Vorthak forces and fought with the desperation of beings who knew that defeat meant slavery or death. Veltar's flagship, recognizing that the battle was lost, tried to escape. But Jake was waiting for him. His fighter, battered but still flying, intercepted the battlecruiser as it tried to reach the edge of the system. This ends here, Veltar, Jake said over an open communication channel. The Vorthak commander's face appeared on Jake's screen one last time. You think you have won, human? The Empire has thousands of ships. They will keep coming until you are all dead or in chains. Maybe, Jake replied, but they'll never break us again. Every being in this system is free, and they'll die free before they let you put chains on them again. Freedom is a lie, Veltar screamed. The strong rule the weak, That is the law of nature. Then we'll change nature's law, Jake said simply. The final confrontation was brief. Veltar's damaged battlecruiser was no match for the combined firepower of 3 resistance ships. When it exploded, it lit up the darkness of space like a dying star. In the aftermath of the battle, representatives from the Allied fleet met with New Dawn's leaders. Captain Rodriguez, a former Earth colonial who had defected from the Imperial Navy, brought news from across the galaxy. Your victory at Kepler Nebula started something, she told the assembled leaders. Slave uprisings are breaking out on a dozen worlds. Some imperial species are starting to question the slave trade. Even within the Vorthak Empire, there are voices calling for reform. Reform isn't enough, Zara said firmly. Slavery must be completely abolished. Agreed, said another captain, a tall alien with blue fur and 4 arms. My people were enslaved for 50 years before we won our freedom. Gradual change just means more suffering for those still in chains. Over the following weeks, New Dawn became the unofficial capital of what the galactic media was calling the Free Territory. More ships arrived every day, bringing former slaves, sympathetic aliens, and humans who were ashamed of their government's neutrality. Jake found himself appointed as the commander of the Free Territory Defense Force, while Zara became the elected leader of New Dawn Colony. Together they worked to build something that had never existed before, a true democracy where